day when I grow up, thought a 5-year-old girl living in Southland, I want to be either a writer or a cartoonist. And since my third form art teacher didn't think I had any aptitude in art, and she certainly didn't think cartooning was an art form, she persuaded me to stay in the typing class, which I did. And when I left school, I got my first job at Southland Crematorium. I know, you're wondering what did you do there, right? I used to tell people very seriously that I emptied the ashtrays. But I didn't. That was a great job. And I worked with a guy not unlike Igor. Stan used to lurch out of a wall and scare you half to death. But it was a great job, and I really enjoyed that time. However, at 18, I had a relationship crisis. The relationship lasted a couple of months, and the crisis a whole lot longer. So I decided to move to Auckland supposedly for a year, but I got stuck because I met and married my husband, who was a sporty Aucklander. Not that I minded being stuck in Auckland, because I love living in Tall Bay. I kind of feel like I've got two homes, Southland and here. But as I said, my husband was a sporty Aucklander. Well, I truly am a one-eyed Southlander. And as much as I cannot see out of one eye, and the other eye's not any good either. So sport was never any fun for me, because the ball used to hit me in the head. I kind of had a feeling that I might have sporty children, but I hoped not at that stage. But for the first 5 years of my married life, I wrote nothing more exciting than the shopping list. And I had two beautiful boys. And when my eldest son turned 5, we enrolled him in the midgets, East Coast Bay's midgets. Well, I don't know how you play rugby, but I know that's not how you play it. So these 5-year-olds swarmed the ball like bees around a honey pot. They made tremendous dives on the sideline. They ripped the ball off their own teammates. And then one kid actually got the ball, and he was running the right direction. And his mother sprinted onto the field, and they ran the entire length of the field together, and together they made that try. I just thought that was hilarious. So I wrote a short story about it, and I sent it into the national radio station. And they must have liked it too, because they put it on air. And I was chuffed. So my youngest son went to school, and I had to get a job. But I got the craziest job in New Zealand. I became a PA for an Asian family, and they were Hong Kong Chinese. And it was at the time that Hong Kong had been given back to China rule. So I went to their house Monday to Friday, 10 till 3. But sometimes I'd go back to Hong Kong for up to 3 months at a time. I had nothing to do. I'd start the car and pay the bills. So I thought, what will I do? So I'd seen an advertisement in the Listener for the writing school, which was a correspondence school. So I thought, I could do that while I'm at work. So I enrolled. Well, the first 4 assignments were challenging, but doable. And then I hit assignment number 5. Assignment number 5 is where I wrote my first and accidental novel. I know, you're wondering, how do you write an accidental novel, right? Well, it took me 3 months, hard slog at work, and I sent it off to my tutor, and she took a while to reply, but when she came back, written in red pen on the cover sheet were the words, the assignment was to read a 50,000-word novel and write a synopsis. And I had written a 50,000-word novel. However, she said, it's not bad and you should try and get it published. Well, I just threw that in the bottom drawer, marked Shelley's mistakes, and it's been gathering dust ever since. But who knows, maybe one day I'll dust it off and have another shot at that. So as I had feared, my children turned out to be sporty, and that meant a lot of time on the sideline, and I still have no idea of the rules. I don't care, I'm watching one kid play. But it made me a very busy taxi driver and cheerleader, and my husband and I had bought a business. So it was quite a good time and a busy time in our lives. And then my eldest son joined the Glenfield Blackhawks roller hockey team. Well, finally, a sport I liked. It was fun, it was fast, it was furious, it was like ice hockey on rollerblades, and I loved it. So the first time my son Paul was out there skating around on a game, I'm yelling, get in there, and he came off. Puzzled, I asked him why he was off, and he said, I'm sin-binned for getting in there. So after that, I just yelled, "Go Kelly," because it was safer. But it was such a great time in our lives, and I liked the sport, and I wanted to make a snapshot of time. So I decided to write a junior fiction novel loosely based around Paul's roller hockey team. So I wrote that, and I called it Revenge, and the name for the main character, Riley Mitchell, came from the back of 2 hockey shirts. So back in those days, you could send unsolicited manuscripts to the publishers. So I sent it off to three, 4 publishers, and what happens when you send a manuscript off to a publisher is you send it and you wait. And you wait. And you wait, and you wait, and then finally you'll get a notification in the mail saying they've received it, please wait. So I got 2 well-wishing letters. I call rejection letters well-wishing letters, because they go like this. "Dear blah blah, thank you for submitting your manuscript entitled blah blah for our consideration. Unfortunately, it does not meet our publishing criteria at this time." So I got 2 of those, and then the 3rd letter came back from Scholastic, and they said, "Interesting story, but the sport is not popular enough. Change the sport and resubmit." Change the sport. I only wrote it because I liked the sport. So I thought, well, blow it, I'll write a new novel. I'll use the same characters. So I wrote a new novel, and I called it Payback. It took me 3 months to write. So by now I had joined some groups. I joined the Kiwi Write for Kids critique group, the New Zealand Society of Authors, and the Storylines Children's Literature Foundation of New Zealand. And I discovered Storylines have an annual awards day, and that they have an opportunity for an unpublished writer to get their book published through Scholastic. And one of the awards is called the Tom Fitzgibbon Award. So I thought, well, that was an excellent opportunity to get my book in front of more eyes than just one. You know, you think when you send it off, you think it end up in a slush pile in the back of the warehouse somewhere, and if they finally do look at it, then it's one person's opinion that turns it down. So I thought this was a good opportunity, so I submitted for the 2001 Tom Fitzgibbon Award. And I got a notification in the mail a little while later saying, "Congratulations, you have been shortlisted for the 2001 Tom Fitzgibbon Award." But that year, they didn't publish the shortlist. Back to the drawing board. So, as I said, I joined the New Zealand Society of Authors, and they're a great group, and they were holding a mentorship program. So I applied for that, and I was fortunate enough to be granted a mentor. And my mentor's name was Judith White. She had been the recipient of the Catherine Mansfield Award and another award, and she had a couple of short story collections published. So it took a while for us to meet up, but when we finally got to meet up, we went once a month for 6 months at an Irish pub in Newmarket. Now, we didn't drink when we were there, but I sure as heck wanted to after every session. Because Judith would say, "I don't like that bit there, change that." So I'd go home and I'd work on it and I'd change it, and I'd come back all happy puppy, thinking she's going to say, good girl, but no. Because you changed that bit there, she'd say, "You'd have to change this bit here." Back again. I was very over it by the end of the 6 months, but I took on board all her suggestions because she knew how to get published. So then I sent it back to Scholastic, and they didn't know what to do with it. So they sent it to Joy Cowley to read. What an honour and a privilege to have somebody of that calibre read my work. And Joy, bless her heart, wrote a 2-page detailed assessment outlining the strengths and weaknesses in the story as she saw them, and recommending I give my main character, Riley, a problem that other children could identify with. Well, I thought about that, and I thought, well, what do we know? Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm vertically challenged. And my youngest son was extremely so. Michael was born 8 pounds 3 ounces, and he shrunk in the wash. So when he was 10, he looked like he was 5, and we spent a lot of time at the growth clinic at the Starship Hospital. So I thought, well, lots of kids can identify with being short. I'll write that into the story. And I did, and I think it worked really well. So by now, time has passed. Everything moves slowly in the publishing world. So the 2005 Tom Fitzgibbon Award came up, and I submitted Payback for that. And I got a phone call a couple of months later, and they said, "Congratulations, you are shortlisted for the 2005 Tom Fitzgibbon Award. However, there's 3 of you, and the competitions are very tight, and so if you haven't heard from us 2 weeks before the awards day, then you haven't won." So I didn't hear, so I knew I hadn't won. So on the actual storylines day, I congratulated the winner, and she told me that she got her phone call at 7 o'clock the night before because they couldn't decide between the three of us. So after with that information, and along with the other person who was shortlisted, Dawn Grant, we went to see the editor of Scholastic that day and said that's not fair. If we're that close, you need to publish all three of us. So she said she'd consider it and get back to me. So another 3 months passed, and then I got a phone call saying, congratulations, we've decided to publish Payback. Yes! Finally, all my hard work and all my perseverance paid off. But wait. You're thinking, but wait, there's more? There's just more waiting. So first they published the winner, who was Yo Sharkbait, I think. Then they published Dawn Grant, who was the other person who was shortlisted. And then they had a couple of publishing contracts pop up that they needed to deal with. So in 2008, I held the first author copy of Payback in my hand. And what a mixture of emotions that was. First of all, I was delighted with the cover. I think they did a fantastic job with the artwork. Then I was horrified by the size of it. I thought, all that hard work and it's hardly bigger than the Avon catalogue. And then I was too scared to read it because I thought, now it's in print. I've changed it that many times and now it's in print. What if I don't like it and I can't change it? So it was given a shrine status on the bookshelf. You could look at it, but sure as heck not touch it, and God forbid read it before I did. But 2 days later I plucked up the courage, and I'm pleased to say I still liked it. So that was good news. And then at the end of the year, the publishers have what they call, what was called then the New Zealand Post Book Awards, and they submit the new books for that, and they're different categories. And I got told by Scholastic that it was nominated for the New Zealand Post Book Awards 2009, which I was delighted at. And then a couple of months later, I got a phone call from the deputy editor of Scholastic, and she said, I've got good news and bad news. I've sent you an email. You need to be talking to me on the phone when you open your email. So I was like, oh, so I opened my email and it said, congratulations, you are a finalist for the 2009 New Zealand Post Book Awards. I'm like, I can't believe this is the best news of my life. What could possibly be the bad news? And she said, and the bad news is you can't tell anyone about it. Not for an entire month, and no, not even your mother.
Especially not your mother.
Tell me now, best news of my life, and it's a secret. However, I got through that long month, and then the New Zealand Book Council phoned me and asked me if I'd go on an author tour to Taranaki. Well, I was delighted with that because writing is a very lonely process, and you spend a lot of time wondering, is anyone going to read what you've written? Is anyone going to like it? So I said, yes, I'd love to go. So on the plane, I'm reading my own book because I've been writing other things, and I thought I needed to refamiliarise myself with the story. And just as well I did. When I got there, the children knew the story inside out, back to front, and they asked the most amazing questions. And it was the biggest buzz ever. It's certainly not about the money, it was definitely about that somebody enjoyed the story. So then they had the New Zealand Post Book Awards at the Auckland Museum. And I got to meet Joy Cowley for the first time. And I said to her, thank you so much for your suggestion of writing, the problem for the main character into the story. It's because of you that I'm standing here today. And she said, she was such a lovely lady. She held my hand and she said, I really hope you win, dear. And she meant it. But I didn't win. I think Jack Lazenby did with Old Drumble at the time. But I was up against big names in New Zealand, and was like, I was just honoured to be there. So I was up against Joy Cowley, Jack Lazenby, Val Bird, and Philippa Weary. And I was like, so it was an honour to be there. So after that, that had died down, and I had a hearing problem. Still have a bit of a hearing problem, but I was really bad, and I had divorced and remarried, and I had 4 teenagers at home that were getting away with murder because I just nod to everything. So I had a hearing operation, and as I was coming out of the anaesthetic, I had the most amazing dream. It was so real that I could touch the wood paneling in the walls, and I knew it was a hotel. It was in Skippers Canyon in Long Valley, and I dreamt the whole story. So when I came to enough, I wrote the outline down, and when I got home I started to write the story. But I struggled, and I couldn't figure out why, because I knew what the story was, so it should be easy. But with the beginning of chapter 3, I realised what, or probably more specifically who, the problem was. I had thought that the story, the main character was Meg, it was her story, and it turned out that Mary Healy, the mother, decided it was her story and she was trying to take over. And when I realised that, I let her have her way, because if you read Riverstones, or you have already read Riverstones, she's a pretty strong lady and you wouldn't want to mess with her either. So once I did that, it worked. And then I thought, goodness me, I have just written a story in a time period I know nothing about, in a place I've never been to. Oh, I've been to Queenstown many times. I come from Southland, but my father wasn't taking his car on that road, thank you very much. So I thought I'd better do some research, and the best, cheapest option was down here to the library. And I came down here a lot, and I got out a lot of history books, and they were like, ooh, so many cool stories. It was like, ooh, how do you fit all the cool stories into the novel? Well, I quickly realised I wasn't supposed to. I had been given this novel in its entirety, and it didn't need anything added to it. So the only thing I actually added was a silly bit that I had read in one of the history books. Other than that, I left it alone. But I needed to know all that information to make Riverstones authentic and make sure that I had all the information correct. So I did all that, and I thought, whatever I learn, I can use in sequels, so that Riverstone stays like the main course, and sequels can be like dessert. So that worked out well. So book written, research done, time to visit the place. So I went down to Invercargill first to find it with Christmas, New Year, and met some family, and some of the family came with me to Queenstown, and we left some family there. And my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, my nephew and myself went into Skippers Canyon together. And my sister-in-law's little Jeep loaded to the gunnels with camping gear. Now, I don't know if anyone here's ever been on the Skippers Road, but it's a pretty hairy drive. There's like a 300-metre drop straight down that way. There's a crumbling rock face this way. There's one lane of a gravel road, and you might meet a bus coming. It's like, where are you going to go? There are names like Dead Man's Gully, Devil's Elbow, and Hell's Gate for a reason. However, we made it alive to Long Gully, where I'd set the novel. And when I got there, I knew immediately one passage was going to have to change, because I had set a liaison happening by the river. And when we got there, you could not see the river from the road. So my brother-in-law, very helpful research assistant he is pacing out where you could have sex if you wanted to. And he's saying things like, well, if you're extremely determined and swinging on a vine across a ravine like Tarzan, you could possibly manage that. So since there were no Tarzans in the story, I said, well, I'll rewrite that bit then, shall I? So mental note to self, rewrite that bit. So we went from there up to Mary Point and looked down there, then up to the branches. And my helpful research assistant again, my brother-in-law, managed to get himself tangled up on a flying fox that must have been built in about 1880. Unbeknownst to me, he was really worried he wasn't going to make it back, but I had no idea until we got out of there that there was a problem. Then we went up to the Skippers School, and we camped beside the Skippers School. And we had a look at the school, and then we went to the cemetery. And when I got to the cemetery, it was the most surreal experience, because I had dreamt the story. And when we got to the cemetery, there were people whose names were similar, when they, died and how they died was similar. And it was kind of like, I felt like the ghosts of the past were trying to speak to the present and say, remember us, don't forget about us, we were here. And I kind of felt quite privileged to convey that message through Riverstones. So the next day we set off to find the ghost town Bullendale. Well, it's a very good ghost town because I haven't found it yet. As I told you before, I'm not good with instructions. Remember the accidental novel? Well, I'm really bad with directions as well. So we took the wrong turn at the start, and we walked for 6 hours on New Year's Eve in the blazing sun. We crossed that river at least 80 times, and I was convinced if we kept walking we would end up in Hokitika. So we turned back, and the only thing that got me that last kilometre back was thinking I am one step closer to a glass of wine, one step closer to the quietest New Year's, I think, in living memory in Queenstown that night.
No, we had a good time.
Well, you guys did, I was asleep. And so they got back to Auckland, and so now I have written the book, I have done the research, I've visited the place. That's not the order you do things in normally, but this is my journey, so I'm telling you how it went. So then what happens is you rewrite the book. And I rewrote the book twice. Normally it's, 4 to 5 rewrites. Well, I got tired of it. I mean, it's 100,000 words, I got tired of it. So I put it aside and worked on other things for a bit. And then we had a minister come to church, and he spoke about how the cemetery was full. And that you're supposed to die empty. You're not supposed to die full with your gifts and your talents. You're supposed to use them up. And I really felt challenged because Riverstones had been a gift. And gifts need to be shared. So I took it up and I wrote it again and rewrote it. And then I sent it out to publishers. And I got the well-wishing letters. I only sent it to 2 traditional publishers, and they fortunately got the one well-wishing letter, and fortunately the second one gave me a good heads up and said, we publish 1 New Zealand author of 1 New Zealand historical per year. So I figured if a well-known historical author submits their manuscript, I didn't have a chance, and it could be a long time before it was my year. So I thought, I'm going to have to do this myself. Well, if I thought writing a novel was difficult, for me, self-publishing has been like climbing Mount Difficulty. When I was 5 years old, I didn't think I want to be a marketer when I grow up. I wanted to be an author, and I still want to be an author. So fortunately, I have some really good people in my life, and my sister and my mother and Joe and Terry have been awesome at promoting me, and thanks to Jules and Jira here for this event, because it's quite difficult to promote yourself. And also I had to get a proofreader editor. Now they don't come cheap. They charge $25 a page or $35 an hour. So that's not only time, energy, but financially invested into the story. And so when it got up, I got it published, which was great, and it was out there. And the sales have been trickling along, but I have to say the best sales have come from Invercargill. I have a little 89-year-old salesperson that's down there, and nobody leaves their house without a book. My mother goes, Shelley's written this book, and this book, which one do you want? And so the podiatrist has got one, the gardener's got one, and half the choir have got one. And I have a solid 80-year-old fan base in Invercargill. And I have had 3 complaints since Riverstones has been out, and they have been, the first one has been, it's finished too soon. The good news to that is there is a sequel, and I'm on the 3rd draft of that at the moment. And the second complaint has been, I was up to 2 o'clock in the morning reading. Excellent news for me. And the 3rd complaint has been, your book made me cry. Well, if you care enough about my character to cry, I am delighted, because it means they became real to you. So it has been an awesome journey. And I feel like I've been living with another 6 extra people in my life for quite a while. And we're not done yet, so I'm writing the sequel. And I recently had to go down to Invercargill because a couple of the characters are on the move. And they're going from Skippers to Riverton, which is in Southland. And it's a bit of a logistical nightmare, because I've got to get them across Lake Wakatipu by paddle steamer. Once they get to the other side, they're going to have to go by wagon, or there's no train yet. So I've got to figure out how long it's going to take, and it's going to probably take them about 14 days. So I was down there recently, and my sister-in-law and I went to the museum. We went to Mrs. Clark's for sustenance, because best gingerbread there, and all good researchers need sustenance. And then we went for a tramp around Round Hill, which was a gold mining area. I'm pretty sure my research assistants hope that the characters in one of my novels go to Europe, so that they get a trip there. But at the moment, we're firmly planted in New Zealand. So, what I can say that are we there yet? No, we are definitely not there yet. This is not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end, because there's 2 more books to write in the trilogy of Riverstones, and there's a movie to make. I wrote Riverstones with a movie in mind, and people who read it say that they can see it as a movie. So if anyone here has got Peter Jackson's number, or give him mine. Either way, I don't mind. But I want to showcase the beauty of Central Otago to the world, and I want to give the people of the past a voice. You know, we need to remember they were here and they've forged life so far. So what have I learnt along the journey? Well, I have learnt to persevere, and there's been many times I wanted to give up, and my mother fortunately won't let me. So she goes, you keep going, be strong, you can do it. But I had one manuscript assessment once after I'd been a New Zealand Post finalist, and I was crushed by it. I thought I couldn't write at all. I was ready to give up. I threw my writing aside. But fortunately I went to a Storylines Day, and I sat beside Pamela Allen, who's a well-known children's writer and illustrator. And I said, I'd had this terrible assessment done, and she said, I have them all the time. She said, if it resonates with you, change it. If it doesn't, chuck it out and go with your gut, which was fabulous advice and just what I needed to hear. And that's why you should be involved, if you are writing, with critique groups, because if 2 or 3 people say the same thing, you need to listen to that. But if it's one person's opinion, get another one. So I'm glad that I didn't listen to that. And I actually read that well-known writer's work, and I love it. I liked her first book, and I absolutely hated every page of her second book. So, it's still just one person's opinion. And what else I've learned is that everybody's journey is different. And I've been down to Ruapehu Writers' Festival in March, and Nikki Pellegrino and Jenny Patrick were speaking. And I asked them how long it took them to get published. And Nikki said immediately. She got published immediately. At which point I thought Jenny Patrick was going to gouge her eyes out with a spoon. Because she had a totally different story. It took years to see her books in print. And her publisher was sitting beside her, and she said yes. And now Jenny sold 91,000 copies. So just because it takes a long time doesn't mean it's not good. So this is my journey so far, where I'm up to. I also wrote my grandfather's biography while Riverstones was being published, and I got to learn about him through a suitcase full of documents that my auntie sent me and said, can you put this into a book? Well, it was a treasure trove. He was a very successful businessman, and he helped set up 2 companies down in Southland that are still there today. And he got the OBE for his services to the farming community and stuff. So I was quite proud to learn about him, and I also admire his determination, his tenacity, his vision, but he just kept going, and so I hope I've got a little bit of that. And I won't keep going now, I promise. I'm going to wrap this up. But if anyone wants to buy a copy of Riverstones, it's Jules down there with the Paper Plus shirt on. Thank you so much, Jules, for she's supporting my book, which is awesome. And there are a couple of copies there, Payback and Lasting Legacy, with my sister Pam can give you if you want. Anyone has any questions, please come and see me, or if you've got Riverstones that you want me to sign, and I'm available. Thank you so much for being here and sharing the journey.
How was that, Shelley? Good. How did you do, Pam?
It was excellent.